Hi there, welcome to FM Language. This is class 9 on our playlist on grammar. And today we will discuss verbs and verb phrases. The first thing that we will say about verbs is that they are typically associated with actions, and that is partially true. Verbs express actions as in break the glass, or states as in be, she's nice, or processes or change of states, as in she got angry. So this is the way in which we will semantically classify verbs. We will also say that verbs are typically associated with tense, and that is also partly true. Let us think of the verb play. The verb play is infinitival. The verb play becomes past when we attach the bound morpheme ed and we say played. So it is the attachment that carries the temporal reference to past. The verb is infinitival. What if we say she's done it? She has done it. In she has done it, has is a modal auxiliary verb specifying, functioning as specifier of the verb done, specifying time. Time would be present there. She's done it. More specifically, we talk about she has done it as the present perfect form if we talk about the whole construction, but it is the verb has, not the verb done, that is telling us this is present, not future, not past. Even if the action has taken place, has is considered to be present by most grammarians, and of course had will be considered to be past intense. Therefore, it is the auxiliary verb or the inflectional attachment, the inflection, that signal tense. It is not the verb. Verbs are infinitival, as in go, past participial, as in gone, and present participial, as in going. The terms past and present are really not very happy terms, because when we say going, we do not know whether we are saying will be going or was going or is going. Still, the form verb plus ing in this context is known as the present participle form. Well, let us leave that aside, given that our main point here is that verbs will take some participial form, present or past participial forms, and or some infinitival form, and they will have attachments signaling tense, ed, or some auxiliary form on the one hand, and on the other hand they will be associated, verbs will be associated with auxiliaries that signal modality. What if we say she may go, she will go, she can go? May, will, can express the perspective or attitude of the speaker in reference to the action that is expressed by the verb. So if I say it'll rain, it will rain, what I'm saying is that I am sure that that's gonna happen. If I say it may rain, what I'm saying is that I'm not so sure that that's gonna happen. Therefore, verbs are associated with modal or inflectional bound morphemes for the expression of either tense or modality in the case of auxiliary verbs. Okay, we have said a number of things about verbs, and we will go on now by stating that traditionally verbs have been classified into different types depending on whether they are transitive or intransitive or copular. So we will say here that there are three main categories: transitive, intransitive, copular. Let us start talking about intransitive verbs. What is an intransitive verb? We will say that there are two types of intransitive constructions. The first one, which we will simply call intransitive, is illustrated by clauses or sentences such as she laughed. In she laughed, we have only one participant or argument. We're going to say that laugh is a one-place verb. Laugh requires only one doer of the action, one agent, and it's intransitive because she laughed is a complete predication, subject predicate, a complete clause that doesn't require an object, as will be the case with transitive verbs. That's something that we will soon discuss. The second type of intransitive construction is the one that is illustrated by clauses such as she went to school. In she went to school, she went to school, there are two participants, namely the participant she, the person who performed the action of going to school. Some grammarians will say that it's not an agent, it's a theme. That is something that we will discuss in the future. But we will now concentrate on the fact that someone has moved or something has moved somewhere. And this place, the destination, is the other obligatory participant. So in a way, we're now defining participants. Participants are obligatory elements that accompany the verb. We're going to say that the verb is the pivot of the clause, and verbs will be one place, as in she left, or two place verbs for the time being, as in she went to school, where went requires a subject and a destination. Grammatically speaking, then she laughed will be analyzed as she subject, laughed predicate. In she went to school, we will have she as subject, went to school as predicate, where the predicate is made up by the verb went, an intransitive verb of incomplete predication. Given that the predication is not complete by just saying went, we need a locative complement. So to school, in she went to school, or there, in she went there, are the complements, the adverbial or locative complements to school there of the verb went. Next, we will discuss transitive verbs. What is a transitive verb? A transitive verb is a verb that requires an object, and the object is either affectum or effectum. What does affectum mean? It means that the verb will express an action that will have some sort of bearing or impact on the object. Let us illustrate our point for clarity's sake. She broke the glass. In she broke the glass is being affected by the verb break. Therefore, we have a verb that is transitive. There is a transition. The agent subject, she, performed an action that has affected the glass. Namely, she has broken the glass. Now, if we say she has made a cake, the cake was not there before, and it is there, is the result, it is the outcome of the action of making it. We will call this an effectum. That is, the action of making has an effect. So there are two different types of objects. Affectum, the object that is affected by the action expressed by the verb, and effectum, the object that is the effect of the action expressed by the verb. These verbs are called mono-transitive, and as is the case with the verb break, they have a subject and an object complement. So we'll call that the complement direct object. These verbs are mono-transitive, and they are two-place verbs. They have a subject and a direct object, a complement direct object. But if we are talking direct object, that means that there is a whole other type of object, and that is the indirect object. She gave me the letter. What we are saying is that there is a process of translation of the letter from her to me. There is a process of transportation, if you like, translation. So she gave me the letter, where the verb gave is bi-transitive, because the subject is performing an action, typically the action of giving, whereby she is providing a certain recipient, the indirect object. She gave me, indirect object, a letter, direct object. So the typical Bi-transitive verb is the verb give, and we can think of other verbs like she sent me a letter, or she bought me a book, or she texted me a message, where these verbs express the fact that there is an agent, a complement the object, the message, she sent me a message, and a recipient, me, the indirect object. So the message is complement direct object, and me, the recipient, is complement indirect object. So now here we have a whole other picture. We have three obligatory elements: she, the complement direct object, and the complement indirect object. So she, direct, indirect, three obligatory participants or arguments. So these are three place verbs. There are other instances of transitivity. Let's think of I put the book on the table. In this case, there is a person, I, that is performing the action of putting a book on the table. In this case, we are also performing an act of placing, of moving, of translating an object from one place to the other. The book was not on the table, another book is on the table, but the recipient is not a person. Say the recipient is some goal or location, in this case the table. These are also three place verbs, but we will call them transitive verbs followed by some adverbial or prepositional phrase or locative complement. So we will have she, agent, put, verb plus direct object, the book plus locative complement on the table. What about sentences like she appointed him manager? In sentences such as she appointed him manager, we have a verb appoint that requires an object, him, and a complement to the object. So the structure will be she, subject, appointed, complex-transitive, him, direct object, manager or head of department, object, complement or complement to the object. Why are these structures complex? They're complex because in sentences such as they consider him a fool, we can expand the clause into they consider that he is a fool. So when I say they consider him a fool, what I'm saying is that a fool is something that is being predicated of him. So a fool is a complement to the object, him is the complement direct object, and she is the subject. We can expand that into a clause, they consider that he is a fool, where there is a subject predicate structure in the, as we will see, in the subordinate clause. These are also three place predicates. Last but not least, we have copular constructions. She's beautiful, or she's a beaut, or she's in the park. As we will see, copular constructions are verbs such as the verb be and many other verbs. We will discuss that in the future. Probably there will be a class on copular verbs. What we're saying is that the verb is functioning as some sort of connector or nexus between the subject and what is being predicated. So in this case, we will say that the subject has a subjective or predicative complement. These are two alternative terms that you might want to use. So she's subject is copular verb, part of the predicate. She's beautiful. Beautiful is the adjective that functions as the predicative or subjective complement, given the fact that it's predicating, saying something about the subject. So we have 7 patterns. Number 1, she laughed, intransitive. Number 2, she went to the park, intransitive plus locative complement. Number 3, mono-transitive, she broke the glass. Number 4, she gave me the book, bi-transitive with a complement direct object and a complement indirect object. Number 5, complex-transitive, she appointed him manager. And number 6, she put the book on the table. And number 7, the copular construction, she is beautiful. An interesting question to discuss at this point is, why should we be concerned with verb patterns? The reason why we should be concerned with them is that, syntactically speaking, this is a structuralist approach that considers that language is made up of patterns or structures that will enable us to convey different kinds of meanings. We will discuss that in a minute. But first, here and now, we will say that we shouldn't focus on the verb proper, as in kiss. Think of the verb kiss. But we should focus on the patterns, because we can express with the word kiss, with the constituent kiss, can be used both transitively and intransitively. So think about the following. If I say they kissed, in they kissed we have an intransitive pattern, we have no object. Of course you can be thinking, well, they kissed each other. Well, if you go for they kissed each other, then you do have an object. Therefore, there's a whole other pattern. Subject plus transitive verb, mono-transitive verb, plus object, a reciprocal pronoun. But you have an object, right? So the pattern has changed. She kissed him is monotransitive in the same way as they kissed each other is also monotransitive. Now we kissed or they kissed is going to be intransitive. There is no object. What about the clause she gave me a kiss? That would be a metaphorical manifestation of she gave me a book or she gave me a letter, where we have subject she, the recipient of the kiss, and the kiss proper. In this case, kiss is functioning as a noun, but we're expressing more or less the same idea, not the same idea, by means of a whole other pattern. What if we say things like, I kissed him goodbye? That would be a complex-transitive pattern. I kissed him goodbye. That is, I kissed him when I said goodbye, when the person was leaving, right? We can go on playing with the language and, think of the verb kiss now as a quality. It may become a quality, it may become an adjective. What about kissable? What if we say she's kissable? That is, we would like to kiss her. I know that's not a verb, but what I'm saying is we shouldn't be thinking about verbs, we should be thinking about verb patterns. We should be thinking about verb patterns given that the same word, the same constituent, may function differently. Again, we kissed each other, they kissed her, and they gave me a kiss. We can use the same verb in different patterns. Therefore, what we should focus on is the pattern, not the verb. Of course, this is a very controversial issue, and you might be thinking there on the other end of the line, yeah, I'm not in total agreement with this. I might disagree with this. I might disagree with that. This is really interesting because basically the question here is not to go for absolute truths, but to discuss and debate the grammar. Okay, and here's another question that we might want to discuss. If we, from a structuralist perspective, from a traditional grammar perspective, which is in this case at least the way in which we are presenting it is structuralist, if we have like 7 patterns, 7 ways of expressing meanings, what we are saying is that we are going to say things like we put the book on the table, a literal expression, or we put the blame on John. So knowing patterns will enable us to express meanings that are both literal and metaphorical. So we put the book on the table, or we put the blame on John, or we blame it on John, or she gave me a book, she gave me a kiss, or she broke the glass, versus she broke my heart. So we're always playing, we're always resorting to the same patterns. This is what structuralists will tell you. Of course, you can disagree with structuralism. We're open to all kinds of perspectives here. But what we're doing now is to present these views, or we're going to be, consistent with a structuralist way of thinking. So structuralists will tell you, look, you got these patterns. That is, the grammar has endowed you with a number of patterns that will allow you to express different kinds of meanings and senses. Now, the word endow or provide, the grammar has provided you with all these patterns, can be regarded from a whole other perspective. The grammar has endowed you, provided you with these patterns so that you can express, convey these senses or meanings, or the grammar has constrained the ways in which you think, we think, to the effect that the grammar will decide the kind of things that we can say and the kind of things that we can think. That is, the kind of worlds that we can construct when we use language to convey meaning. There is something that we will discuss in the future, but in today's class we have focused on the fact that there are then verb phrases. We are now recapping a little what we have said, the fact that there are verb phrases that belong to different patterns, the fact that we should not focus on the verb but the pattern, given that different verbs can belong to different patterns, and last but not least, the fact that such patterns will enable us to either enable us or constrain or restrain the ways in which we convey different types of meanings, both literal and metaphorical, as we have illustrated in today's class. Well, we hope you have enjoyed this class. Again, if you like our classes, you might want to share them with your colleagues or fellow students. We hope that you will be watching our future programs, and we also hope, we are being too demanding today, that you will subscribe to our channel. Bye bye, see you in class number 10.